Hello, good evening. It's still July 18th here. I was watching some Ukrainikins with my son this weekend. I say too much. He does not like the song at the beginning, so I'm going to try to just start talking right away. I started today working on a show about His Royal Idiocy's great change, the Stalinist education reforms that Putin plans to roll out. But as usual, the Russian Federation troops and the Wagner mercenaries are intensifying hostilities towards towns in the Donetsk territory, and Ukraine apparently has to deal with its own people helping them, even those who are in positions where they've been entrusted with protecting the security and upholding the rule of law for the Ukrainian people. Google then got handed a percentage of profit fine today from a Russian Muppet court, and since that seems to be the least upsetting thing that happened, I thought we could talk a bit about the battle for tech and for control over cyberspace. So as many of you may recall, last week there was a Russian gentleman sentenced to prison for putting the words special military operation in quotation marks. The court held that it was ironic, and he was sentenced to jail. If we can define situational irony as actions taken having an effect exactly opposite from what was intended, i.e., invade Ukraine to distance NATO from Russia's borders, and you get Sweden and Finland to sign up with a renewed commitment from the current NATO members to defend Western principles of sovereignty and democracy. And yes, Mr. Putin, I know you've heard enough about democracy from all the weak and decadent, misaligned Western democratic paper tigers who are condescending to the great empires like Russia and China, while committing Russo-threatening, hypocritical acts of violence with every promotion of freedom and voting. But guess what? What you've done is you've made us all think very hard about how grateful we are for all of the freedoms that we have in the Western world. When we look at our systems and we say, we have corrective mechanisms, we learn from our mistakes, we are tolerant, we believe that that government is for the governed, and these are principles and things that we will die for. So today, a Russian court fined Google $360 million for failing to remove content that Russia deems illegal, which included coverage of the war in Ukraine. The forbidden content here includes clips that are encouraging Russian citizens to participate in protests and news that Moscow considers fake. Okay, we have a country that the U.S. has lots of fake news. And it's basically, the onus is kind of on each of us to be a free-thinking individual. You decide how much news you want to intake. You decide what you want to listen to, what you want to find credible, what you want to believe. And as a country that, we have Mormons here, people believe a lot of crazy things. What's the one with Tom Cruise? The Scientologists? But that's their right. That's their right, and they believe it. People vote for Donald Trump. I don't get it, but they believe what he says, and we live in a world where that's okay, because again, whatever's if it's strong, hit it as hard as you can, and if it's still standing, then it's good. Okay. I know earlier today, Russian fascist sociopath Vladimir Putin told a group of sycophants that it is impossible to cut Russia off from the rest of the world, and that sanctions imposed by Western countries will not turn the clock back on Russia's development. This is the guy setting fire to fields of wheat in order to start a global famine, Saddam Hussein style. And he's whining about the West's weaponization of denying him access to our technology. He says, not just restrictions, but the almost complete closure of access to foreign high-tech products is being deliberately, intentionally used against our country. Yep. Putin said on today, speaking at a video conference with government figures. It is clear that this is a huge challenge for our country, but we are not going to give up and stay in state of disarray, or some of our well-wishers using ironic quotation marks. Predict go back decades? Of course not, he said. Interesting. So, I read an article in the New Yorker by David Remnick where he interviews Professor Stephen Kotkin, one of our most profound and prodigious scholars on Russian history, and it's a wonderful interview if you get a chance to read it, and they kind of go through some of the ways that this is not the Russian people, this is just Russia, and that it repeats itself over and over again because it kind of clings to these 3 points of glory and then is otherwise a rather second-rate power that believes itself to be something more, and it creates problems. So I don't speak as articulately as they do. So in the interview, the first question is, for half a millennium, Russian foreign policy has been characterized by soaring ambitions that have exceeded the country's capabilities. Beginning with the reign of Ivan the Terrible in the 16th century, Russia managed to expand at an average rate of 50 square miles per day for hundreds of years, eventually covering 1/6 of the Earth's landmass. The interviewer goes on to say that the professor describes 3 fleeting moments of Russian ascendancy. First, during the reign of Peter the Great, then Alexander I's victory over Napoleon, and then, of course, Stalin's victory over Hitler. And then you say, these high watermarks aside, however, Russia has almost always been a relatively weak great power. I know they don't like hearing that. And by they, I mean Putin and his circle of nitwits. Okay? The professor notes that Russia itself is a remarkable civilization with a remarkable culture. This is something that I speak to my Russian friend about all the time. The art, the music, the literature, dance, film, science, in every sphere, it's a profound and remarkable place. And at the same time, and my friend confirmed for me that Russians very much feel that they have a special place in the world, and that they are on a special mission. It's an Eastern Orthodox place, and it's not Western. And they want to stand out as a great power. The problem has always been that their capabilities have never matched their aspirations. It's always in a struggle to live up to those aspirations, and it can't, because the West has always been more powerful. And that's been a burden since I think at least the early 1900s. And I want to be clear about what we talk about when we say the West, because again, I think that it connotes geography when in fact the West is actually a series of institutions and values and not a geographical place. For example, Russia is European but not Western. Japan is Western but not European. Western means the rule of law, democracy, private property, open markets, respect for the individual, diversity, pluralism of opinion, and all the other freedoms that we enjoy, which we oftentimes take for granted. We sometimes forget where they came from. But that's what the West is. Ukraine is Western. And our united West is revived now thanks to the courage and bravery of the Ukrainian people and their leader. Thank you, President Volodymyr Zelensky. You and your people have stood up. You are outgunned. You are outmanned. 10-1, I think I heard today. And you stand up and fight. And it gives the rest of us a focus, something to say. We need to be. This is a fight we're all in together. I feel that that's been renewed now, and the West has stood up to Vladimir Putin in a way he never expected. I think the sanctions are hurting him. I want to tell you a story about the only class I've ever taken with my middle sister was in high school. It was a statistics class with a teacher called Mrs. Dickensheets, and my sister has both yin and yang. She is both Beavis and Butthead. And so please take 3 months of your life and try to put various emphases on the different syllables of the name Dickensheets, and you will know what I know about statistics. In that class, there was a boy named Boris, and he was from the former Soviet Union. And luckily, my sister took a break to go to the bathroom, presumably to do some kind of drugs. So we actually had a chance to look at a question in the textbook. And it involves a question about consuming paste as a child. So Mrs. Dickensheets, as my sister was returning from the bathroom, was trying to get a poll survey to ask how many people here consumed paste as a child. And Boris very happily raised his hand. He ate paste. And my sister, of course, obnoxiously asked, how long did you wait in line for that paste, Boris? And his answer was, several days. But he was happy. And that didn't seem to bother him at all. And that was kind of Boris. And I really liked him. And I was also impressed by some of the stories he would tell us about kind of just how patient and how different his life has been growing up, and kind of the virtues that the strength that he got from kind of some of this adversity. That being said, here we are with sanctions, and we have a very tough group of people who are willing to put up with very difficult times, very long lines, long lines to buy their new brown printer paper. Did you read about that? Because they no longer have access to the dye to make their printer paper white. And so instead of saying, we don't have it, they have said that it's been determined that it's a health problem, that the glare from the white paper is toxic for you. So now, as a courtesy, they will have brown printing paper. So these people will absorb almost any economic sanction that we throw at them. And I say almost, because the one that the government can't ignore, it's the biggest one, and it's about technology transfer. We are starving them of high tech. We are denying them American-made software, equipment, products, and that affects just about every important technology in the world. You can actually hurt this regime by creating a technology desert that the Chinese can't fill. And China's watching this very, very closely because, I've had this argument with my husband so many times, over, as Putin says, the decline of America. And don't think that we don't think that ourselves sometimes, and don't think that we don't realize it. I have often told my husband, who is in technology and does develop software, that I feel very lucky for his particular skill set and for the work that he does, because I believe that is what is making America, keeping America. I don't want to use a Donald Trumpism. It's one of the things that is valuable that America produces for the world, uniquely ours. We may not have unlimited oil reserves and diamonds and gold and whatever else you think you have over there. But we have really smart people who have developed incredible technology that is used in everything, and that includes in missiles and rockets. And we're gonna starve you of that. So there's a Chinese proverb that I learned when I was a kid. From my dad, and I think I may pronounce it wrong, but it's yin zhe bu jie, zhe zhe bu yin, and it means those who speak don't know, and those who know don't speak. So, reading all of these articles, it would seem to me that underneath all of the HIMARS and the discussions about courts of justice and war crimes and genocide, there is a cyber war going on that none of us see, that none of us know, or most of us. I'm not including those who are involved, and that it may be advancing at a pace and in ways that, and with effectiveness that outmatch atomic weapons. But what do I know? I don't know. As Putin said earlier, using his own ironic quotation marks, about well-wishers predicting that they would go back decades. I'd like to just point out that you don't have decades, baby. You got the round 70, the big round 70 birthday, and I think you should be looking for a spider hole or a cave in Pakistan for that one. Because that's the thing about despots. You're terrible at everything. Putin has only had to be good at one thing for 23 years to survive. He has denied the Russian people all political alternatives, forced all opposition into exile or prison, and surrounded himself with armed, dim-witted flatterers that are no threat to him, no matter how incompetent or corrupt, barbaric or terrible he is. But nobody lives forever, and that includes all of the Kremlin economists and the paranoid military personnel and their delusional leader. One day there will be an alternative. Russian independent TV Rain relaunched today. They set up in Latvia. And they said, today more than ever, the citizens of Russia must have access to independent, truthful information. And they said that even though they were forced to leave the country, we, like tens of millions of Russians, want the war to end, and for Russia to return from a path of catastrophe and destruction to the path of development. I hope that's true. And I hope that happens for them. But more than that, I wish the Russian people would pick their heads up out of the sand and hold themselves and their government accountable for what they are doing to Ukraine. To quote Lin-Manuel Miranda's masterpiece Hamilton, Russian people, if you stand for nothing, what will you fall for? Stop killing Ukrainians. Get out of the country. Leave them alone. The whole world is watching you, and we see exactly what Ukrainians stand for, and what they will die to protect. They will die for their hard-earned, never-forgotten freedoms. And it's been a painful and costly reminder to the rest of us that we should be grateful and thankful every day that we can make YouTube videos like this and try to talk and have a dialogue about what makes sense in terms of sovereignty and governance. So on that, I just want to thank all of the Ukrainians for fighting so hard for democracy for the world. Slava Ukraini, Heroyam Slava. Good night.